This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
Very good morning. You're watching News9. I'm Karthik Malhotra, and on the show today we have some big stories coming up for you. First up, we will try and decode what the DPDP Act or the Digital Personal Data Protection Act really means for you, the citizens of the country, and what kind of powers does it give to the government. So that's the big story that we're tracking for you. Also on the show, markets are likely to snap that 6-day winning streak. Global cues suggest that markets are going to have a weaker opening today. Mohit Gang will be here to tell us what to look out for. And also on the show, on the international segment, it looks like Tim Cook is finding a successor as Apple's succession planning takes off. This is Morning Brief at 9. Watching Morning Brief at 9. First up, let's bring you all the headlines that we're tracking for you this Tuesday morning. India rolls out the DPDP Rules 2025, introducing strict consent norms, heavy penalties, and an 18-month deadline for all digital platforms to comply with the country's first comprehensive data protection law. India-US trade deal's first tranche nears completion, aims to roll back Trump-era tariffs and address reciprocal duties. India's exports fall nearly 12% in the month of October as US tariffs impact shipments. But India's gold imports triple in the same month of October to a record of $14.72 billion amid festival and wedding demand, pushing trade deficit to an all-time high. India's free trade agreement talks with EU and New Zealand in final stages, closure expected soon, while negotiations with Peru, Chile, UK and ASEAN also progressing. This as per the Commerce Secretary. With just weeks to go for the annual India-Russia summit, high-level engagements pick up pace as External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar meets Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov in Moscow. Mahindra Group Chairman Anand Mahindra warns of a far bigger crisis at hand amid fears that AI will wipe out white-collar jobs. Market regulator Sebi approves confidential pre-filing for Snapdeal parent Ace Vector, along with IPO documents for Silver Consumers Electricals and Steel Infra Solutions. iPhone maker Apple sparks online mockery with a $229 iPhone Pocket. Users joke it looks like a sock, criticizing high price and design. Well, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, IT, has officially notified the Digital Personal Data Protection Rules 2025, putting India's first comprehensive data law into full effect. Now, these rules operationalize the DPDP Act of 2023, laying out how companies must handle your personal data and what rights you, as a user, now have as far as your personal data goes. The new framework introduces a strict consent-based system for platforms ranging from Instagram and Facebook to Amazon, Flipkart and digital payment apps. The goal is to ensure every user knows exactly how their data is used and give them real control over it. And remember, there are consequences to these rules not being followed. Now, under the new rules, companies that misuse or mishandle data can face penalties of up to 250 crore rupees. All platforms have been given 18 months to fully comply, after which violations will attract heavy fines. But now, officials say that this timeline could be compressed.
We have been discussing with the industry the first set of rules that we have published. Basically, this gives a very reasonable time frame depending upon what the industry's ask was and what our thrust was. But we are also in touch with the industry to further compress the time which is required for compliance, because exactly the same argument we have given to the industry, that you already have a compliance framework which is existing in other geographies. Why can't you replicate? And they are quite positive on this. So as we go forward, once the data protection board is put in place and a complete digital framework which has already been prepared, that is rolled out, after that we'll have further amendments in the rule so that we can compress the timelines.
All right, and let's go further into this story. Joining us this morning is Kanish Gaur. He's the CEO of India Future Foundation. Good morning, Kanish. Thank you so much for being here with us. Just give us some more perspective on this story. To begin with, exactly what kind of data are we talking about here? And what rights do citizens have to keep that data absolutely protected?
Thank you, Karthik, for bringing me in. We are talking about user personal identifiable information, which so far has not been regulated. And a lot of time data breaches happen, your and mine data gets leaked, and companies hold no accountability. That is going to change
Data,
with the
Kanish,
new data.
just to be amply clear, when we say data, do we mean our Aadhaar and our PAN details? Do we mean our bank account details? What kind of data are we talking about here?
We are talking about personal identifiable information, which is related to your and my data, which could be used to identify you or me. So we are talking about our biometric. We are talking about information with respect to our credit card, information with respect to our sexual information, our health information, all that data which can be used to identify you and me.
Okay.
Now, so far, what used to happen, we used to give this information to companies, and this used to be stored via cookies or via metadata, and this could be used for marketing to us, or this could be used for identifying what our needs are. And users were never able to get consent how their data would be used, stored, transmitted, or shared with third parties. So, for example, you and I give our information to a bank, but that bank gives away this information to a third party, which is used for marketing and selling products to us. Now, for that, consent would be required. That's the big part which is changing with this new data protection regulation. So, if any data is breached, the company needs to notify it within 72 hours. And if it is not doing that, there is a penalty up to 250 crore rupees, which could be put in. So there is greater transparency which will be applied on how user data is stored, transmitted, and there would be more methods where how cross-border data needs to be safeguarded. So big tech platforms take a lot of data of ours and then it is moved outside the country as well. They apply algorithmic processes. Also, they had zero accountability so far. So that is going to change in India.
All right. Understood that part of the story very well, Kanish. Thanks for that. But help us also understand that when we talk about consent, how easy or how complex is it going to be for users to actually give their consent to use or to protect their data, simply because there is something called dark patterns and there are something called lengthy terms and conditions which become very difficult for anybody to read through and understand, and eventually these dark patterns available mostly online don't permit you to proceed unless you tick that you agree to the terms and conditions. Now, we don't know exactly how those terms and conditions are going to be drafted, and eventually users may be hoodwinked into just giving consent. So how does the government safeguard that? Because what we are also picking up is, and this is something that the minister also mentioned, that there's going to be a board which is constituted, but there doesn't seem to be a real regulator here which ensures that this data is protected.
See, those are far-reaching concerns with the current data protection law. Unlike the GDPR, this law lacks essential rights such as data portability, objection to processing, explanation for automated decisions, restricting meaningful control over personal data. So, unlike GDPR, there are nuances which are not clearly defined. Then we have weak transparency obligations. There are no legal requirements for transparency reports from government or private companies on access requirements, algorithmic processing, surveillance activities, or reducing accountability. It also lacks international data transfer dependence, which were purely on government notifications and which could still be done without clear advocacy, standards or independent evaluation. So it creates more risk and uncertainty for global businesses. With respect to redressal mechanisms, I think the only route is through the board. There is absence of a ombudsman or a appellate privacy tribunal, which limits the access to justice and slows dispute resolution. So these are certain key aspects which is there. The Data Protection Board is truly not a regulator. It has no supervisory or audit power, and it functions only as a adjudicatory body,
Right.
which can play a role after breaches have happened. So the enforcement is only limited, right? It also grants the government far unreaching exemptions when it comes to government agencies without proper proportionality test, sunset clauses, or independent oversights. Hence, it in a way weakens citizens' privacy protection.
Right. So talk to us about these excessive powers that the government is keeping with itself by way of this act, because the government can decide to exempt any organization, a government agency in the interest of national security, national interest. So how does the citizen actually know that what data is actually being shared with the government for what reason, and thereafter what control does the citizen have if the government feels free to exempt certain bodies or certain organizations from using that data in the interest of national security?
See, currently the government has authorized 10 agencies in India which can primarily monitor our personal identifiable information, right? And this includes law enforcement agencies which use various technologies, and they have been under tremendous debate in the past. Now, can this act allow more than 10 agencies to put surveillance mechanisms on citizens? There is no clarity on that right now, right? Could it be 12 or 15? Would there be notification be carried out by the government if this list is increased, or the tools, techniques, or methods used by them would be increased further? Or would these tools or techniques be procured internationally, right? There is no clarity on those aspects, right? So I think there is weak transparency obligations when it comes to processing all of this information, specifically by government agencies, specifically on data access request.
Right.
So I think that reduces accountability right now, and surveillance activities have not been minimized. So it gives enough power for government to use surveillance tools, technologies, and even procure them from outside. And it can increase the number of agencies which could basically monitor a common man.
All right. And finally, Kanishk, 18-month timeline, is 18-month okay to implement something at this scale across the country, across businesses, across all the compliance regulations which are likely to come in? Or do you think there is a chance that this 18-month window could be extended going forward?
Right now, the minister is actually talking about shortening the 18-month window to 12 months.
Okay.
So he believes that, with more modifications, this act could be tightened. Typically, we saw in EU when GDPR came in, similar timelines of 12 to 18 months were provided, but they are already well prepared with respect to norms. They had systems well defined. In India, defining those systems from scratch, a lot of companies are starting their data privacy journey. They don't even know where their data sets are residing, how they need to obtain consent, what kind of data flows they need to set up. So practically on ground, I believe at least 18 to 24 months would be required for companies which hold large amount of data of Indian citizens, particularly companies which hold large citizen data bases to be used, whether it is telcos or banks. So it will take more time until and unless we already have mechanisms in place. For example, consent manager. There is no consent manager in India right now.
Right.
So who's going to be the consent manager? The software, the platform, right? The data protection board. How it will be formed? Who would be its key members? What would be the rights of this? Can the data protection board be challenged in court? Right? So all that element has to be clearly defined. So there is a lot of vagueness on some of these aspects. So, right, whether it comes to appointment of the adjudicators, whether it comes to tenure, removal, functioning, are this going to be controlled by the central government? How independent the data protection board is going to be,
Right.
the limited mandate, right? The supervisory powers which are there, right? For example, conducting suo motu inspections,
That's right.
or binding code of practice, or cross-border data transfers, or proactively, auditing significant data fiduciaries. There is no clarity on all of those subjects.
Absolutely, you're
So,
right, Ganesh. So it is a function of the board on the governing body literally reacting post-event rather than pre-event and working in the capacity of prevention. Well, of course, and we don't know yet whether that 18th-month window is going to be crunched to 12 or maybe extended to 24. But Ganesh Kaur, thank you so much for all those inputs on this very important story and for your time this morning. Moving on now, the first phase of the India-US bilateral trade agreement is now nearing closure, and it could finally lower the steep 50% tariff imposed by the Trump administration on Indian goods. Officials say the US has also levied 2 sets of 25% penalties on Indian exports, partly linked to India's purchase of Russian crude. Now, negotiators are working on a special package to ease these reciprocal tariffs, and that tranche is almost ready. Remember, 6 rounds of talks have already taken place, and New Delhi says resolving the 25% penalty is essential. Without it, the deal would have no meaning. Meanwhile, India's state-run oil companies signed a 1-year LPG import deal with the US for 2026. And this is being seen as a part of a broader push to balance trade. The larger goal is mainly boosting bilateral trade between India and the United States to $500 billion by 2030. And moving on now to data coming in from exports for the month of October, and that data is not looking too good. India's exports have fallen sharply in the month of October, contracting almost 12% to $34.38 billion, hit hard mainly by high US tariffs, even as the country's trade deficit soared to a record $41.68 billion, driven largely by surging gold imports. The government data shows imports rising over 16% to an all-time high of $76 billion, with gold imports alone jumping nearly 200% and silver soaring over 500%. Now, key export sectors like engineering goods, petroleum products, gems and jewelry, textiles and chemicals all saw major declines. Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agarwal said India is holding its ground despite global headwinds, but attributed some of this drop to a strong base effect. Exporters warn the widening gap reflects slowing global demand and escalating costs, urging faster support measures and easier credit. Meanwhile, services exports offered some relief, rising to $38.5 billion in the month of October. And from trade, let's pivot now to foreign policy, and that foreign policy between India and Russia getting strengthened ahead of President Putin's visit to India. And remember, with just weeks to go for that annual India-Russia summit, high-level engagements are picking up pace in both the capitals. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov in Moscow, while in New Delhi, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval held talks with Russian Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev. All this comes as both sides prepare for President Vladimir Putin's expected visit to India on December 4th and 5th. Jaishankar said India-Russia ties have long been a factor of stability in global affairs and stressed that strengthening this partnership serves both national and international interests. He noted that preparations for the 23rd annual summit are well underway, with several agreements and initiatives under discussion. Jaishankar also added that both sides are reviving the summit agenda, reviewing it and closely working towards concrete deliverables, as he also engaged Lavrov on regional and global developments. Listen in.
This particular occasion, for me, is all the more important as we prepare for President Putin's visit to India for the 23rd annual summit. A number of bilateral agreements, initiatives and projects are under discussion in various fields. We look forward to the finalization in the coming days. This will certainly add more substance and texture to our special and privileged strategic partnership.
Meanwhile, Ports and Shipping Minister Mr. Sonowal held high-level interagency consultations in New Delhi with Nikolai Patrushev, senior aide to President Vladimir Putin. Both sides reaffirmed the depth of the India-Russia special and privileged strategic partnership, crediting the strong guidance of Prime Minister Modi as well as President Putin. Officials discussed collaboration in shipbuilding, port development, maritime logistics, Arctic operations, research and training, and expressed satisfaction with the forward-looking progress. The meeting ended with a shared resolve to build a more resilient and sustainable maritime partnership that boosts long-term prosperity and global connectivity. And time for a short break right now, but as expected, markets are in the red this morning, losing their 6-day winning streak, largely coming on the back of the global markets and the cues from there. Mohit Gang will be joining us on the other side of the break to tell us what to do in a scenario like today.
लाख का हॉस्पिटल बिल है, इतने पैसे कहाँ से आएंगे?
पैसों की चिंता आप मत कीजिए पापा।
मैम, सर का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस क्लेम अप्रूव हो गया है।
आप
पॉलिसी बाजार
हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस क्लेम में हमेशा आपके साथ। पॉलिसी बाजार 1 करोड़ का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 550 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
जनाब, आपने भारत कनेक्ट का नाम सुना है?
नहीं, बस सर्विस है क्या?
बस सर्विस नहीं, वो 700 से ज्यादा एप्स पे बिल पेमेंट्स पॉसिबल बनाते हैं, जैसे अभी किया।
भाई वाह!
आप हमें जानते नहीं पर मानते जरूर हैं, हम हैं भारत कनेक्ट।
क्वालिटी पे इतना कॉन्फिडेंस, इसलिए बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस। 1 साल में पेंट को कुछ भी हुआ तो पेंटिंग वापस करके देंगे। रजिस्टर करो birlaopus.com पर।
Some sounds never leave. They wait to be found again. Inspired by humanity, powered by innovation, Taiwan excellence.
Welcome back. You're watching News9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Let's bring you a mood check on the markets as the Wall Street just opened. But before that, there are solid cues coming from Asian markets, which are also reeling under pressure with respect to the US markets, which did not have a great trading session yesterday. So as things stand right now in the Asian market, you're seeing South Korea's Kospi as the biggest loser. That index is down about 2.25%, while Taiwan's TAIEX is also down more than 2%. Meanwhile, Hang Seng as well as Nikkei 225 are down more than 1%. In fact, Nikkei 225, which was down about 2%, Japan's main index, is now down about 1 3/4 of a point. China holding a little better, but still down about 0.5 percentage point or so. Let's move on now to Indian markets, and Sensex as well as Nifty 50 are both seeing declines in early trade, pretty much snapping that 6-day winning streak that we saw earlier. Sensex and Nifty both under pressure this morning. The Nifty 50 heat map is showing you the real picture, where you're actually seeing stocks from across sectors reeling under pressure this morning. The only exceptions happen to be, at least right now, as far as the large companies go, Bharti Airtel, which of course has got a more positive outlook from S&P Global. But beyond that, you look at the auto sector, look at the IT sector, look at even the energy stocks. It seems to be a day of red on the market. Sensex is now below the 84,800 level or so. Nifty 50, meanwhile, under the 26,000 levels. Mohit Gang joins us this morning to put all this data in perspective. Mohit, good morning. So, of course, we are seeing some knock-on effect from the US markets, but it's not just the US markets, is it? There seems to be something which is really troubling investors this morning. What is the mood that you're picking up on the Lal Street?
Hi Karthik, morning, always a pleasure to be on your show. So I think, look, the mood gets set with the US markets overnight. Honestly, I think US markets have been on an uncontrollable tearing rush for last 1.5 years odd, and I think it's the accumulation of the overall AI story which is playing out in a lot of quarters. Now we hear chatter about AI bubble getting burst and the tech giants kind of unfolding. So it starts with an Nvidia correcting a little, and that's where the US mood is getting set. Also, along with the data now coming out after US shutdown has opened up, the data is mildly indicating that there might not be a rate cut in December, which is what the market was really hoping for. If that be the case, then obviously there is a case for US equities to cool down a little. Look, again, it's data, and every day there is a new set which comes out, and every day the odds in favor or against of the rate cut keeps changing. But that also defines the global mood. Secondly, I think for reasons unknown, Kospi has been correcting a lot, and I think somewhere the global mood is now setting at some bit of profit taking, some bit of risk aversion in the overall trade. However, having said which, I think the fundamentals in India are looking extremely robust, and day by day the possibility of a massive rate cut in India increases, right? Whether it will be 25 bips or 50 bips is now a call which has to be taken. But more or less, given the data print, I think it looks likely that India will go in for a 25 bips rate cut, which is what I think the market is sensing. And that's where you are seeing the market slowly inching up. I think today's market is more of a global reaction, but I would still remain a little bullish on Indian markets right now.
All right, let's look at the Nasdaq for just a moment, because you were talking about that AI bubble, and of course there's a lot of theory now about the AI bubble eventually bursting. I'll request my PCR to actually cut to the data that we are seeing right now, because it seems that again there seems to be some sort of a divergence when you talk about this AI story, because a stock like Google has raced up more than 3%, but Nvidia is down about 2%, Apple is down about 2% or so. Meanwhile, even Tesla is up, but Meta is down. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that there doesn't seem to be a real pattern as far as the AI bubble goes. And you're seeing very stock-specific variance when it comes to the US markets, Mohit. Why is that the case?
Look, I think the markets will obviously react to the earnings in US, and we will see incremental earnings coming in from quite a lot of big names this week and so on. But my sense is a lot of anti-AI trade is also getting played on in the market. So if you see all the big AI-driven stocks, be it Nvidia, be it Meta, be it Microsoft, they're taking some bit of a beating. I would still put Google in an anti-AI thing because of the old traditional search engine being their primary focus area, right? So again, these are all speculations. You never know which way the market is heading, but my sense is there is a definitive sign of some cool down in the tech space of US, and I think it was long warranted. So maybe it is coming slowly and gradually.
All right, so tech sort of slowdown in the US. What does this mean for tech stocks here in India? Because tech stocks, as you know, have not had anything close to a fabulous year, and in fact have only been bleeding, no matter how the earnings and what the forecasts are. I think the message is pretty clear that if US tech stocks happen to tumble, then India will not be left far behind, would it?
Look, yes and no both. My sense is because US tech is more a story of innovation, more a story around AI, more a story around chips and other things. Indian tech is more about services. And I don't think so that's slowing down. Look, so from a large extent, there are two cases which can pan out. One is US tech slowing down or correcting because of the anti-AI story. If that pans out, then yes, Indian tech benefits because Indian tech was never in first place rested upon the AI theory. The second part is that if US tech slows down, the spending from all the tech giants reduces, and gradually some portion of income which the Indian tech companies provide as services to the US tech companies might also slow down. So it's a both way impact. You will have to figure out which impacts more, but my sense is, given the way the IT pack has been bleeding for last 1.5 years, we are nearing the value zone on the IT pack in Indian markets. Maybe not now, but in a quarter or so, I think it will start looking very attractive again.
All right. I also want to shift focus now to energy stocks, and energy stocks again on the basis of announcements coming in that India is going to up its LPG imports from the US, and all primarily, hinging towards that trade deal to finally go through. What do you make of energy stocks in this new development?
Look, I think I am now bullish on the energy pack per se. I think after the metals and the commodities, perhaps energy pack is something which is showing some signs of breakout overall. And my sense is if the US-India trade deal goes through, which in all likelihood should now come through in some form or manner, I think the energy pack will show good signs of a bounce back from here on. Plus oil being at levels where it has been for the last 1 year odd. I think it is any which ways giving a good boost to the overall energy companies in India. So yes, I think given the way it is shaping out, if the trade deal comes through, my sense is it's a big plus for the energy companies in India.
All right, big plus for energy companies. What about your steel and the metal and the non-energy sort of commodities pack? Because again, that is something which was among the first to be hit when the tariff announcement came through. Now, if tariffs are rolled back, or at least the 25% secondary tariffs are thrown out, then how does a sector like steel, aluminium, etc. get impacted?
Look, very difficult to call out, Karthik. Honestly, I think the metal spec has already run up a lot this year, and in spite of the tariff being in play. So my sense is perhaps it could be a case of maybe some amount of profit booking out there, or maybe it's a classic case of buy on rumor and sell on news kind of a thing. So my sense is I would stay away from the pack right now, or maybe just watch and wait it out for some time for the entire story to pan out.
All right. I also want to talk about the defensive stocks, the FMCG stocks. And the FMCG stocks, again, we've seen the GST reduction. We've seen demand also increase, and hopefully Q3 is likely to be better than Q2. But, these FMCG stocks should largely, one would understand, remain completely unimpacted from what happens on global markets. So why are we seeing this sort of a reaction even on defensive stocks, which, as the name suggests, should be, in fact, go-to stocks when there is volatility globally?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I think for last 1 month odd, we have seen some traces of momentum bounce back in India, and which is where I think the defensive play has taken a little bit of a backseat. I continue to remain absolutely bullish on this pack, given the way the tax ops have been doled out in the country, given the way GST numbers have been, direct tax reductions and then indirect tax reductions by way of streamlining the GST buckets. And I think everything, plus the festive season spending, I think everything will now start flowing on into the market, and with a good monsoon, my sense is overall the pack has been resilient, but it has not given the kind of returns one should be expecting out of the pack because of the constant news flow plus and minus. But my sense is this is one pack to look forward to for next 6 months to a year kind of a scenario.
All right. Now, talk to us, Mohit, something, which is always relevant no matter these ups and downs in markets, and that is about asset allocation. Now, again, we've seen gold prices had inched up again yesterday. I haven't actually checked the MCX number today, but it seems that gold and silver continue to be in the hot territory. Overall, as far as, a retail investor goes who's looking at rebalancing his or her portfolio today, what should the ideal mix be? How much should that be invested in Indian equities? How much of that should be large cap equities, and how much of it should be outside of equities in other asset classes like gold?
Karthik, I think gold and silver has been both a dreamy thing for Indians, but an Achilles heel for the government of India because of the high import numbers which have come in, and the trade deficit has suddenly soared because of this entire thing. But coming back to asset allocation, look, I firmly believe that commodities, incrementally so, warrants at least 10 to 15% allocation in any kind of portfolio, and you cannot do away with it. In spite of the run-up, we continue to believe and we continue continue to remain long-term bullish on both the metals, and I think every investor should have that allocation constantly in their portfolios. Having said which, I think equities have been a dramatic underperformers in Indian equity markets, and I would still continue to believe that you hold your equity allocations again depending on the risk profile, or maybe go a little overweight on equities, on Indian equities for the time being. Not massively so, but yes, I think a little overweight on Indian equities for the time.
Passive investment, is this the right time to go passive, or do you think this is actually the time to go thematic and really go and pick up those interesting stocks and those interesting baskets of stocks through mutual funds?
If you have the wherewithal to research and analyze and be a bottoms up picker, then yes, by all means go and pick up those few good names. But I would continue to believe that yes, the power of index is much larger than anything else. So be a good long-term passive investor and be a good short-term tactical investor is my call. So on tactical side, you can also go on to active funds and select few of those baskets out there. But on a long-term strategic basis, I think a passive allocation in portfolio always warrants merit.
All right, Mohit gang, thank you so much for all those inputs and for your time to us this morning. Always a pleasure having you on. And with that, we will slip into another short break. But before that, the global headlines that we're following for you this morning. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman all set to arrive at the White House on Tuesday for high-stake talks with US President Donald Trump. F-16 fighter jet sales and a civil nuclear framework deal likely on the table. Facing rising public frustration over inflation, US President Donald Trump argues tax cuts and domestic manufacturing will ultimately boost real incomes. Mandatory flight reductions imposed during the US government shutdown finally lifted, even as the Federal Aviation Administration warns it remains critically understaffed, raising long-term safety and scheduling concerns. iPhone maker Apple fast-tracks leadership plans as signals grow over CEO Tim Cook's retirement, with senior executive John Ternus emerging as the frontrunner to take over the iPhone maker's top job. Alphabet shares jump 5.5% after Warren Buffett's firm takes surprise stake, marking one of the final major investment moves under the Berkshire chief as he edges towards retirement. Cryptocurrency plunges as investors dump risk assets. Bitcoin leads losses, with the sector shedding over $1 trillion since its early October peak on fading hopes of a Fed rate cut. Pushing Tokyo towards a $110 billion stimulus package to ease household pain and revive demand. All these stories on the other side of the break. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
$25 लाख का हॉस्पिटल बिल है, इतने पैसे कहाँ से आएंगे?
पैसों की चिंता आप मत कीजिए पापा।
मैम, सर का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस क्लेम अप्रूव हो गया है।
आप
पॉलिसी बाजार
हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस क्लेम में हमेशा आपके साथ पॉलिसी बाजार। 1 करोड़ का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 550 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
What is speed? Do you ever see it? Or is it something you feel? Speed, it's relative. The more you speed up, the more the world slows down. And when you are fast enough, everything becomes still. That's when you see the world as it truly is. Servo Hypersport F5, when speed is your default.
लाइफ जब भी आगे बढ़ने का मौका दे तो अपनी सुपर पावर, अपना गोल्ड यूज करिए और IIFL फाइनेंस से गोल्ड लोन लीजिए।
IIFL फाइनेंस करता है सीधी बात।
Welcome back. You're watching News9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Time now to pivot to all the global stories that we're tracking for you this morning. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman will arrive at the White House on Tuesday for talks with US President Donald Trump. His first visit to Washington, D.C. since the 2018 killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi sparked global outrage. The meeting comes as the Saudi Crown Prince repositions himself from international outcast to a central power broker in West Asia and beyond. Take a look at this report.
Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is on a mission to reclaim his place on the world stage, with his first White House visit since the 2018 killing of Saudi critic Jamal Khashoggi sparked global outrage. With long-running oil and security ties at stake, Tuesday's meeting with President Donald Trump underscores a relationship built on strategic interests that has endured beyond Saudi Arabia's mottled human rights record. So, how did the man commonly known as MBS pivot from pariah to power player? MBS's rise began when his father became king in 2015 and gave him powerful portfolios, including defense. 2 years later, he ousted his older cousin as heir in a palace coup and became crown prince at age 31 with almost unprecedented powers. MBS vowed to open the kingdom to the world, marking a generational shift.
70% of Saudis are under the age of 30. We will not waste 30 years of dealing with extremist ideas. We will destroy them today.
He defanged the once-feared religious police and swept away decades of austere social codes. Women now drive, work and mingle with men, freedoms once punishable by flogging. This year, Jennifer Lopez strutted on stage in Riyadh as models swept the catwalk in a high-profile fashion show. But the same hand that opened Saudi society also tightened its grip on power. Dissent is crushed, with critics and activists given prison and death sentences, according to rights groups, though the kingdom rejects accusations of human rights abuses. US intelligence linked Jamal Khashoggi's killing in 2018 to the prince. MBS denied ordering it, but admitted responsibility as de facto ruler. Then presidential candidate Joe Biden said Saudi Arabia should be made a pariah over the killing. But Washington ultimately moved on, driven by energy, defense and technology. 7 years on, MBS now casts himself as a broker of peace, repairing ties with Iran, pushing for a Gaza ceasefire and welcoming Syria back into the Arab fold. Under MBS, Saudi Arabia has grown its soft power, pushing itself as a tourist destination and pumping billions of dollars into global sporting events in a move critics call sports washing. Trump's return to the White House this year revived a transactional warmth, with $600 billion in Saudi investment pledges made when the president visited Riyadh in May. While MBS presses for deals in nuclear energy and artificial intelligence under his ambitious Vision 2030 plan to diversify the Saudi economy. The pair are also looking to deepen ties over a decades-long security deal that sees the Saudis selling oil at favorable prices and the US providing security in exchange. But a defense pact MBS wants has a hurdle. Washington is requiring the kingdom to normalize ties with Israel. For that, Riyadh is pushing Israel's government to commit to Palestinian statehood, something Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has staunchly opposed. Analysts say deals are set to be struck this trip, but with both sides likely getting less than they want. And in the meantime, what's not set to be brought up are the human rights concerns that previously sparked moral outrage.
But human rights concerns apart and aside, President Donald Trump had hinted, in fact, ahead of MBS's visit to Washington, that President Trump is likely to approve the sale of the US F-35 fighter jets to Riyadh, and Riyadh wants 4 dozens of those, as many as 48 aircraft, an acquisition that would mark a major shift in regional military dynamics and test America's commitment to maintaining Israel's qualitative military edge. Let's listen in to what President Donald Trump said.
Yeah, no, I am planning on doing that. Yeah. They want to buy it. They've been a great ally. They've got to like us very much. Look at the Iran situation, what we did in terms of obliterating, we obliterated their nuclear capability. Yeah, I will say that we will be doing that. We'll be selling F-35s here.
And facing local anger over rising prices in the country, US President Donald Trump said that his administration is making progress on inflation, but said the job is far from over. Speaking to fast food chain McDonald's franchisee owners and suppliers on Monday, Trump argued that tax cuts and reshoring manufacturing will lift real incomes, though he acknowledges the effects will take time. Listen in.
Putting prices down for this country, and there's no better leader or advocate than McDonald's. And I believe the next time I'll have to be back here again next year if you get them down enough, okay? That's all you have to do for me is get them down enough. We'll come back. So we don't have, as I said, the inflation, but our energy prices are way down. And despite hamburgers being a big business, energy is one business that's bigger. When you get energy down, everything else is affected. If you start bringing the price of gas, that's like a massive tax cut.
And America's Federal Aviation Administration has lifted mandatory flight restrictions at 40 major U.S. airports. The restrictions were imposed during the federal shutdown due to air traffic control staffing concerns. Now, despite ending the mandated flight cuts, the FAA is still about 3,500 ATC personnel short of its targeted staffing levels. Take a look.
The Federal Aviation Administration lifted its mandated cuts to domestic flights on Monday. The move eases restrictions that were put in place during the government shutdown, which ended last week. The FAA had imposed the flight reductions to cope with fatigue and staffing shortages among air traffic controllers, many of whom had already been working mandatory overtime in 6-day weeks even before the shutdown began. Air traffic controller absences had led to tens of thousands of flight cancellations and delays, disrupting travel nationwide. Despite ending the mandated flight cuts, the FAA is still about 3,500 air traffic controllers short of its targeted staffing levels. Meanwhile, air traffic controllers and other FAA employees have started receiving back pay equal to about 70% of what they are owed, as the agency works to recover from the shutdown's impact.
And reports indicate that iPhone maker Apple might get a new boss next year. The American mobile manufacturer is accelerating its CEO succession planning amid signals that Tim Cook may step down as soon as next year. This according to a report in the Financial Times. Senior executive John Turnus is widely expected to be the leading candidate to replace Cook, though Apple is not expected to name a successor before its January earnings release. Remember, Tim Cook became Apple's CEO in 2011 after Silicon Valley legend Steve Jobs resigned, ending his reign at the tech giant he co-founded in 1976 in his parents' garage. And staying with news from the big tech in the US, Alphabet shares climbed as much as 5.5% on Monday after Berkshire Hathaway disclosed a stake in Google's parent Alphabet, one of the last major investment moves under Warren Buffett's leadership. Now, while Berkshire Hathaway has traditionally avoided tech stocks, Buffett argues that Apple is a consumer products company rather than a technology bet.
Alphabet shares rose 5.5% in pre-market trading on Monday. Investors jumped in after investing giant Berkshire Hathaway disclosed a stake in the tech firm. It marked what could be one of the final major moves by the group under Warren Buffett's leadership. A filing on Friday showed Berkshire owned 17.85 million shares in Google's parent as of September 30th. Reuters calculations showed the stake could be worth about $4.93 billion as of the stock's close. Berkshire's move comes as concerns grow over big tech's heavy artificial intelligence spending and whether AI valuations are too high. Buffett is due to end his 60-year run as CEO of Berkshire at the end of the year. It was unclear who made the specific purchase at Berkshire, though Buffett usually oversees the larger investments. Berkshire has traditionally avoided tech stocks. While Apple is the group's largest stock holding, Buffett argues it's a consumer products company rather than a technology bet.
And the world's first decentralized cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, tumbled to its lowest level in more than 6 months as risk assets sold off on fading hopes of a near-term Federal Reserve rate cut. The broader crypto market has shed over $1 trillion in value since its early October peak. Here's a look.
Bitcoin's price dropped below $93,000 Monday, falling to its lowest level in more than 6 months. The decline comes amid a broad sell-off in riskier assets. One trading director recently told Reuters that because Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies generally move with the stock market, they haven't become an asset of alternative value to hedge against fear in other sectors. He added, quote, "If there is no enthusiasm toward risk-taking, it seems like that also translates into hesitation with Bitcoin and the like." Risky assets overall have come under pressure in recent days, as expectations of a rate cut from the Federal Reserve in December have shrunk, as a growing number of policymakers signaled an indication to hold off. Markets now price in about a 40% chance of a December rate cut, down from about 90% earlier this month. Since peaking on October 7th, the crypto market capitalization has fallen by more than $1 trillion, or about a quarter of its value.
And moving to Europe now, France has pledged a major long-term boost to Ukraine's air power. French President Emmanuel Macron announced the supply of up to 100 Rafale fighter jets to Ukraine over the next decade as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Paris to secure fresh military support. The commitment comes as Russia intensifies drone and missile attacks and claims new ground gains in Ukraine. Now speaking at the Champs-Élysées Place, alongside Zelensky, Macron said the EU must provide stable long-term financial backing for Kyiv, signaling to Moscow that Europe is not losing resolve. China and Germany agreed on Monday to stabilize commercial ties and end months of escalating trade tensions, with Berlin under pressure to show it has a handle on China's policy as a record trade gap widens and supply chains wobble. The announcement came while Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and German Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil met in Beijing on Monday. Take a look.
China and Germany have agreed to work towards ending trade tensions and furthering commercial ties. The announcement came while Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and German Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil met in Beijing Monday. Klingbeil's visit was the first to China by a minister from Chancellor Friedrich Merz's government, which took power in Germany roughly 6 months ago. Ties have grown tense recently for reasons including Chinese export curbs on chips and rare earths. Those moves have caused major disruptions for German firms. Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil.
In my talks today, I received assurances from the Chinese side that German and European concerns about export restrictions on rare earths and critical raw materials are being taken seriously, and that we want to find joint solutions that ensure reliable access and reliable supply chains.
Klingbeil further talked on the topic of Chinese overcapacity in key sectors like steel, solar and electric mobility. He said both countries agreed it should be a shared task to lower such overcapacities and ensure stable competitive conditions. Vice Premier He said Beijing was committed to working with Germany to expand joint cooperation. The two countries are bound by an important commercial relationship despite their differences, and their economic ties have become even more crucial as US tariffs squeeze global markets. Chinese companies are now serious competitors for German firms in many sectors. However, data also showed China bought $95 billion worth of German goods last year, with a large portion being cars, while Germany bought $107 billion of Chinese goods, mostly chips and other electronic components.
And that's all we have for you on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. Thank you so much for watching, but news continues right here on News 9 after this short break, so stay tuned.
What is to the nines? In literal terms, it's perfection. But to us, it's not just a phrase, it's an attitude. One that starts at your desk and sends a statement to the world. To the Nines is about taking charge. It's a way of life where every seam, every fold, is crafted with excellence.